Formula One has always been about speed, glory, and respect. But when that respect disappears, that's when things get ugly. From teammates sabotaging each other in the pit lane, to title rivals deliberately colliding for world championships, to drivers being forced within inches of a concrete wall at 300 kilometers per hour, the sport has produced some of the most outrageous acts of disrespect ever seen in professional sport. These aren't just racing incidents, they're personal feuds, bold statements, and moments that shook the entire F1 world. And today, we're reliving the boldest, dirtiest, and most controversial clashes that defined Formula One history. The 2007 Hungarian Grand Prix qualifying session looked like business as usual, until it turned into one of the most blatant acts of disrespect between teammates the sport has ever seen. McLaren had built what looked like a dream lineup, reigning two-time champion Fernando Alonso paired with rookie sensation Lewis Hamilton. But instead of harmony, sparks flew from the very first race. Hamilton wasn't interested in playing apprentice. He wanted to beat Alonso, and Alonso wasn't about to be embarrassed by a rookie. By mid-season, tension in the garage was unbearable, and in Q3 at Budapest, it finally exploded. During the final minutes of qualifying, Hamilton ignored a team order and stayed out longer than planned, upsetting Alonso's strategy. So, when Alonso came in for his final stop, he made his move. He sat in the pit box deliberately for nearly 20 seconds, long enough to block Hamilton from getting out in time for a final flying lap. The cameras caught it, the team radios lit up with panic. Hamilton was left stranded, gesturing furiously at his own teammate as he sped past. Alonso did get his lap in, but the stewards weren't impressed. They dropped him 5 places on the grid, and McLaren lost their constructors' points from the weekend. The damage, though, was already done. The pit lane had become a battlefield, and the rift between Alonso and Hamilton would dominate the rest of the season. For McLaren, what was meant to be a super team turned into one of the most toxic rivalries in modern Formula One. Some rivalries are fierce, but Ayrton Senna versus Alain Prost? That was war. The 1990 Japanese Grand Prix at Suzuka was the boiling point of their feud, and it ended in one of the most infamous crashes in Formula One history. The year before, Prost and Senna had already collided at Suzuka, a crash that handed Prost the title. Senna never forgot. Fast forward to 1990, and Senna was determined not to let history repeat itself. To make matters worse, he was furious with the FIA for placing pole position on the dirty side of the track, giving Prost, starting second, a huge advantage. Senna warned before the race, if Prost tried to take the lead, he wasn't lifting. It wasn't a threat, it was a promise. When the lights went out, Prost rocketed off the line. Senna tucked in behind, and then, at 270 kilometers per hour, he made his move. He drove straight into Prost's Ferrari at turn 1. Both cars flew off into the gravel, race over in seconds, and just like that, Senna was world champion. The move sparked global outrage. Fans and pundits called it dangerous, disgraceful, and unsporting. But for Senna, it was justice, revenge for the politics of the previous year. This wasn't just disrespect. It was a message that, if you play games with me, I'll end it on my terms. When teammates collide, it's always ugly. But when it's for the win, on the very first lap, at over 300 kilometers per hour, that becomes legendary. In 2016, Mercedes were untouchable. Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg were dominating the field, but behind the podium smiles, their friendship had turned into one of the most toxic rivalries in F1. All the tension finally erupted at Barcelona. Rosberg got the jump off the line, taking the lead into turn 1. Hamilton, desperate to fight back, saw a gap on the inside. Rosberg squeezed hard, leaving Hamilton with nowhere to go. In a heartbeat, the two silver arrows touched wheels, spun off violently into the gravel, and both were out of the race. The Mercedes garage was stunned. Toto Wolff looked like he'd aged years in a matter of seconds. Fans around the world couldn't believe what they'd just witnessed. 2 championship contenders out of the race before the end of lap 1. For the first time in years, Mercedes failed to score, and instead, a teenage Max Verstappen stepped up to take his very first Formula One victory. The crash wasn't just about points lost, it symbolized a rivalry so heated it nearly tore Mercedes apart from the inside. The 1994 season finale in Adelaide was pure chaos, and it ended in one of the most controversial moments in Formula One history. Michael Schumacher entered the race leading Damon Hill by a single point in the standings. On lap 36, Schumacher clipped the wall, damaging his Benetton. Hill saw the chance of a lifetime, diving down the inside at the very next corner, but Schumacher had other ideas. He turned across Hill, the two collided, and both cars were destroyed. Schumacher's race was over, but crucially, so was Hill's. That meant Schumacher, in just his first full season, became world champion. But instead of celebration, the paddock erupted in anger. Many believed Schumacher had deliberately caused the collision to secure the title. It was the moment that gave him his reputation as brilliant but utterly ruthless, a line between genius and gamesmanship that he would cross again and again in his career. The rivalry between Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost is the defining feud of Formula One's golden era, and Suzuka in 1989 summed it up perfectly. Prost led the championship. Senna needed a win to stay alive. With just a handful of laps to go, Senna lunged for a desperate move at the final chicane. Prost, who had no intention of making it easy, turned in. The two collided at over 250 kilometers per hour. Prost climbed out immediately, convinced he'd just secured the title, but Senna wasn't done. Marshals gave him a push start, and he rejoined the race, charging back through the field to take the win. For a brief moment, it looked like Senna had pulled off the impossible. Then came the hammer blow. The FIA disqualified Senna for cutting the chicane, handing the championship to Prost. To Senna, it was proof the FIA president was protecting his French rival. For fans, it was proof that this rivalry had gone beyond racing. This wasn't just about points, it was about politics, pride, and pure hatred. Suzuka, 1989, didn't end the feud. It escalated it, and a year later, Senna would take his revenge in the most brutal way possible. Monaco is the crown jewel of Formula One, the race every driver dreams of winning. But in 2006, Michael Schumacher turned the principality into the stage for one of F1's most infamous scandals. During qualifying, Schumacher was sitting on provisional pole, but with Fernando Alonso flying on a hot lap and looking set to steal it, Schumacher suddenly lost control at Rascasse and parked his Ferrari across the track. The yellow flags came out, Alonso's lap was ruined, and Schumacher kept pole. The problem? Nobody believed it was an accident. The Ferrari wasn't damaged. The steering looked too deliberate. Commentators, rival drivers, even fans, almost everyone called it a stunt. The stewards launched an investigation, and after reviewing the footage, they dropped the hammer. Schumacher was stripped of his time and sent to the back of the grid. His reputation, already split between genius and controversy, took another massive hit. To this day, Rascasse Gate is remembered as one of the most brazen acts of gamesmanship ever seen in Formula One, proof that Schumacher would do absolutely anything to win. The streets of Baku have produced plenty of drama, but nothing like what unfolded between Sebastian Vettel and Lewis Hamilton in 2017. Hamilton was leading under the safety car, carefully controlling the pace. Vettel, frustrated, thought Hamilton had brake-tested him. In a moment of pure rage, Vettel pulled alongside, threw his hand in the air, and then swerved into Hamilton's Mercedes, deliberately banging wheels. The world was stunned. A four-time world champion had just lost his cool and rammed his title rival in front of millions watching live. Hamilton called it disgraceful. Vettel argued Hamilton slowed too much. The stewards gave Vettel a 10-second stop-go penalty, but many believed he had gotten away lightly. That one flash of temper didn't just damage Vettel's race, it damaged his reputation. For the rest of the season, the narrative wasn't just Vettel versus Hamilton, it was Vettel versus his own emotions. And looking back, Baku 2017 was the moment that showed Ferrari's charge at the championship might not survive Vettel's mistakes. Formula One has always been about precision, respect, and pushing the limits. But these moments showed the darker side of the sport, when pride, ego, and anger took control. From teammates sabotaging each other, to world titles decided by collisions, to drivers using their cars as weapons. These weren't just racing incidents, they were statements. So which moment do you think was the most disrespectful in F1 history? Was it Senna refusing to lift against Prost, Vettel's road rage in Baku, or Alonso's sabotage against Hamilton? Let me know in the comments. I'll be reading through them all. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. We've got plenty more untold stories, rivalries, and controversies from F1's wildest moments. And trust me, you don't want to miss them.